An email last week asking about sewing a tighter lining. So the demonstration for tonight will be showing you how to sew a tighter lining by just a simple increase in the seam allowance in the middle of whatever piece you're sewing. This technique can work with most pouches and bags that you're working with, and by sewing a slightly larger seam allowance when the bag is finished, the lining in theory will fit a little bit tighter. And even if this instruction is not included in whatever bag pattern you're working on, you can easily adapt it to whatever project you're working on. So this is a really quick 2-minute video, but it will show you how to sew that tighter lining. Okay, so I'm going to start and stop by sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance. However, for this bag, I feel like the lining will fit more tightly if we veer in toward a bigger seam allowance near the beginning. So I'm going to draw just a quick line, a quick little scribble where 3/4 of an inch is toward the middle of the panel. All right, so how this works is we're going to start by sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, gradually veer in toward that 3/4 of an inch, and then as we approach the bottom edge, start veering back toward a 1/2 inch. So the reason we're gradually veering is so there's not any sharp points or jags. We're just going to kind of create like a little hill and then come back down, and same thing on the other side as well. Okay, and I've got my stitch length set to my regular stitch length, which is 2.5 millimeters. Okay, we're going to trim the seam to approximately 1/4 inch, and this helps reduce bulk in the side seams of the finished bag. And then you'll go ahead and press the seams open on the end of your ironing board. I hope that was helpful. So in that demonstration, I was working off a pattern that was using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, thus I increased to 3/4 of an inch. Whatever the seam allowance is, for example, if it's 1/4 of an inch, you can just veer off to a 1/2 inch. You just want to bump it up a little bit. And over time, you may find that you might want to increase even more depending on what your preference is as far as the particular project that you're working on or the tightness that you'd like to see in the lining. But it is personal preference and certainly something that you can easily adjust no matter what pattern you're working on. So